So, hello, hello, hello. This is Lucy again with the Profitable Photographer, and I have an awesome guest today. He's been on my show before, and everybody loved him, and so did I. So, we thought, let's bring him on back all the way from England. So, did you have a good trip, Jeff, flying here from England this morning?
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yes,
Funny enough, I am actually coming over to the States next month.
oh,
So
where are you coming to?
I'm coming to New York, and then I'm going to Pittsburgh. Because I've got two things on. I've got something on in New York, and I've got something on in Pittsburgh. And because my daughter's finishing school on the 20th of June for good, that's her finished 16-year-old, then she can come along as an official helper, as a business expense as well. So she gets a bit of a holiday out of it. So that's quite
Ah,
cool for her.
so fun. I wish I'd had kids so that I could have had adventures with them like you. So, before we get started, before I introduce our illustrious guest, let's see. You can go to lucydumascoaching.com if you want to learn more about me and what I offer, and you can book a quick call if you have an interest in chatting about anything. It is no obligation. If you just say, could you look at my website or pricing or something, I'm happy to uh, oblige. So let me tell you about Jeff. Uh, I had to shorten his biography because it's huge. He's done all the things and it's such a big way. So let me give you just a little taste. He served with the Royal Navy as the military photographer, then ran 5 successful photography businesses of his own. He's photographed over 750 weddings himself. I've done about 500, so I know what that takes to show up on your own for that. That's a lot. And then 9 years ago, he began developing online photography business mentoring programs or a program. And his goal, his joy in life is to motivate and inspire photographers around the world. So we share that. And we don't share this. He's written 4 number one best-selling books for photographers. And he writes for many, many, many publications, the OM System Society of Photographers. He's been president of the British Institute of Professional Photographers, and on and on and on. The British Photography Awards and more. So, Jeff, thank you so much for taking your time and setting up, because it's evening where you are. So, taking time out of your evening to have a chat.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine. And I thought a good thing for our talk this time would be something that I know a lot of photographers do struggle with, because obviously I do talk a lot about marketing and branding, but talking about the sort of the creativity part of being a creative, being a photographer, and believing in yourself, the mindset side of things, because ultimately you can have all the goals in the world, you can have great ideas for your photography business, but if you do struggle with mindset, if you do struggle with self-belief, procrastination, all of that stuff, you're going to really find it difficult to move forward. And of the British Institute of oldest professional photography association in the world, I was asked to do a talk, and not about marketing, about something different. So I decided to talk about mindset, um, because that's something I've struggled with myself.
I love it.
And yeah, so I did a talk about that, and it went down really well, really well, which led me to researching a lot, and then working on a new book called The Photographer's Gratitude and Mindset Journal.
Ooh, a journal. I love it.
A journal, yes, yes.
So, in your mind, defined define mindset.
So for me, for my mindset is basically it comes to that old saying that, whatever you believe, you can achieve, but you've got to have a strong belief in it. And um 10 years ago, 2015, well, nearly 10 years ago, 2015, I had a huge failure. So I'd sold one of my photography businesses. I decided that I had this brilliant idea to invest in a real sort of oldie worldy English country pub that was going to be a wedding venue as well as a food pub. So I thought that would be great for my wedding business, great for additional revenue. So I bought the lease, then spent £120,000 doing the place out. Um, and everything that could go wrong went wrong within about 12 months, to the fact that I lost all that money. I suffered a massive breakdown, tried to take my own life,
Mm.
and had to reset and rebuild myself, and ran away to Northumberland, where I live now, 16 miles from the Scottish border. And I was in a very dark place for about 6 months until I started to build myself back up. I did loads and loads of listening to audio books and getting my mind right back in the right place to
Mm.
believe that I could do something, that I could achieve what I wanted to achieve. And now I look back at that failure as the best failure I've ever had, because that failure led me to giving up the weddings. We'd sold the boudoir studio. It allowed me to create this online business now. I work with photographers in 25 different countries around the world. I have passive income coming from book sales and stuff like that. But more importantly, I've spent a lot of the past 7 or 8 years with my daughter, spending time with my daughter,
Mm.
traveling, enjoying my life. Um, a lot less stressed, a lot happier, and a lot grateful for what I have in the life. But it took me to go to that point of, trying to take my own life and really struggling to get a focus and get back, and
Ah.
come from a really bad place to being the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. I must say, I wish I'd learned some of the techniques 20 years ago. But obviously, this stuff doesn't come to you till you're older and a bit wiser, does it?
Right.
And you've had a few knocks, and you've been through a few different areas. And as I researched for the journal, for the book, I was also asked to contribute to another book that's getting written called
So I just want to pause.
Individually.
Hold on.
Yeah,
In case people don't want to know what a book is, it's a book, right?
a book in England. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, in North
We just
England. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
translate here a little bit. Okay, so you've got I'm overwhelmed with all, like, I have questions and things of everything you just shared, but I didn't want to cut you off. You said you're working
No,
on
no, it's fine. Fine.
another book.
Jump in. So
Uh,
I was asked to contribute to a book by a guy called Michael Whitaker, who I'm going over to see in Pittsburgh
ah,
next month. And he's written a book called, it's about to be published in the next few months, called Individuality in Creators. So he created a program for the US government that ran for about 30 years to find out what makes people who they are.
mm,
And who we are is we're born as not knowing anything, not understanding anything. And the concept of who we are comes from loads and loads of outside um, influences, work colleagues, friends, parents. But a lot of those can be negative, and we take them on through later life. So he's written this book, and he's interviewed 12 creators from around the world, different types of creators, artists, photographers, coaches, ballerinas,
mhm.
painters, that sort of stuff. And the funny thing is, people from the creative industry have a higher, uh, um, struggle more with imposter syndrome, struggle more with very low lack of self belief, and also struggle a lot more with, can struggle a lot more with depression and negative feelings, because they have such a close attachment to their work. It's because of
Ah,
that creativity that goes through us. And the more I read into this when I was researching for my book, the more I spoke to other photographers, the more I realized that, yeah, a lot of photographers really do struggle with that, but quite often it's not our work that's the problem. It's our belief in ourselves. Our work is fantastic. And
right,
if we get a negative knockback from a customer, it doesn't mean that we're a bad photographer. It might mean that that customer wasn't the right customer.
right,
We were marketing to the wrong people who don't value us, people who would only spend $50 on a photo shoot anyway. So we don't want them people,
right.
you know.
So let's see. We got to jump into this rich uh waterfall of thoughts and things that you're sharing. There's so much here already. one of the things, practical things that I work with friends and my coaching clients is in our business, learning to separate our product from our self-worth. And that's, just throwing that in a little bit, that if we don't see our clients' reaction to what we create as a mark of whether we're worthy or not of drawing breath or being a human, or that it means anything about ourselves, that to me is step one about learning to handle the imposter syndrome. Um, so, that's just a little start. I think, do you know about the whole study of the highly sensitive individual? Do you know about
No, no.
HSP? Okay, that's on your book list. Uh,
Right, I'll stick that on my book list.
the so I don't know, it's been over 30 years, but the there was a book and now there's a movie that Alanis Morissette uh is like the host of it, called Sensitive. And 15% of the population has higher sensitivities, and like almost like we have a less layer of skin, or our hearing is stronger, our ability to see. Like my first memory was light coming in the bedroom window when I was in my crib. And uh and it's harder for us in the world. And like kids are more sensitive than adults, but the HSPs remain sensitive. And it's a blessing that can appear as a curse. It certainly can be challenging. And I find that so many people in the creative field are HSPs. And a lot of us, like what Alanis said, is the thing that makes her magnetic and creative and people want to be around her is also the thing that at a certain point in life they reject her, because she's so much. She's so, you know, everything, all the things that make her interesting and creative can be difficult to be around at times. And
Yeah.
anyway, so jumping that little bit in there, uh, as you explore these topics, thoughts on that?
I was asked to write a column this month for the Photographer magazine, which is the magazine of the British Institute of Professional Photography, and it was on neurodiversity. So talking about dyslexia, ADHD, autism,
Mm-hmm.
OCD, and how that it's surprising how many photographers struggle with, you know, one or multiple of these sort of
Right.
neurodiversities. I myself am dyslexic. I was kicked out from school. Both my parents were teachers. My dad was a lecturer.
Oh,
Mum was a teacher. But because I was dyslexic in the 1970s, 1980s, that was my school time. I was just I was just told I was stupid. I wouldn't amount to anything. You know, I need to knuckle down and improve. But I couldn't improve because it just didn't make any sense to me. So the education system failed me. But I've still gone on to write 4 best-selling books.
yeah.
I've overcome that. I've found a work around it. I am also quite OCD. I have to follow certain procedures, and everything's immaculate in my home. Everything has to
Mhm.
follow a certain routine. But I use that to the benefit of my business. But one thing I have had since the age of 14, 15, I started my first ever business when I was 15 years old, and that was making fishing flies and selling them to fishing shops. And my first
Ah,
ever business was at 16 and a half, and I got a grant from the Prince's Trust, and I set up under the Prince's Trust, which was obviously Prince Charles's charity. And that business lasted me for 10 years until I went into the military, because I knew the education system wouldn't work for me. But one thing I had right at the very beginning was I had a vision, really, really detailed vision of what my business would look like. And I think that is something I talk about in the journal. The first thing I ask people to do in the photographer's gratitude and mindset journal is to visualize, and visualize in as much detail as you possibly can. So write down what success looks like for you in every aspect. House you're living in, who your partner is if you don't have your perfect partner, where you've just come back from holiday, what your studio looks like, what cameras you have, what car you're driving, how many customers you've got coming from the door, what those types of customers are, every possible, even, what challenges you've completed. You've ran your first marathon, you've climbed your first mountain, you've lost a stone in body weight, all that sort of stuff. Visualize it. And then what I then do, and what I've done for years, which helped pick me out of this really low point, was to type that up as if I was giving it to a story to somebody in the pub. So I met a friend in the pub and I was saying, "Oh, this is what's happened since I last saw you." So I'm putting this is my visualization statement, type it all up, and then I'll record it on my mobile phone as a voice recording, put loads of excitement into it, but I'm talking in the present tense as if it's already happened. So, oh, I've got this great house, I've got to drive in this particular car. And what I do is I listen to that every day.
Mm.
And the funny thing is, as the years have progressed and my visualization statements have changed, so many things on those first initial visualization statements have become true. So one of the things I used to say was, I work closely with the professional photography associations in the UK. I'm now president of the oldest one in the world. One of my visualizations was I wanted to be a brand ambassador for Canon. I'm actually now a brand ambassador for Olympus cameras, and I've changed over to Olympus. So a lot of the stuff that I've dreamed of has actually come through. But the reason being is because I've visualized it, because I've repeated it every day,
Mm.
it's made me more aware of the direction I want to go, and it's made me open for opportunities, and it's kept it, oh, I should be looking here, I should be doing something towards this. So it helps with my goals and my direction
Yeah.
as well.
So one challenge I see when I coach people, the first thing I do is ask them to visualize as if it's a year from now and things are just the way they
Yeah.
them. And I find people are so challenged to even begin to think about it. And I think there's two issues, and maybe you can address whichever, uh, or both that
Yeah.
makes sense to you. One is not knowing the potential.
Hmm.
The other is feeling like it's impossible, that it's hard for people to dream. Something scares them about putting something out there that seems impossible. So
Hmm.
why try? So thoughts about that? And
Well, first of all, when you create this visualization statement, and if you're putting it into a journal, the best thing to do is write it down first. Then when it's written down, because you get into that action of writing it down, you're committing it to paper. Then you're going to
okay,
read it back, and then you're going to listen to it every day.
hold on.
So
So
yeah,
what I'm talking about is the first stumbling block I see is
yeah,
even having a vision, even
mhm,
thinking about something they can write down. Just being stuck saying, "Oh, well, I want a successful studio and maybe I can make $20,000." And that's as far as they can take themselves.
mhm.
So do you have
Well,
some thoughts
yeah. So
about
so one of the
how you
things is
can
like if you
how you
had
can get a vision?
yeah, so if you had no limitations, right, what would you write down? But another thing is to look at some of the photographers that you really, really admire or aspire to be like. Now, every single one of those photographers, and I don't care what anybody says, every single one of those photographers started out with their first customer. When
Mhm.
they created their Facebook page or their Instagram page or their LinkedIn platform, they had one follower, right? So they're just 10 or 5 or whatever years ahead of the journey of you, but they've had a direction. They've known when they're going and they've thought about it. And I've read so many books, but audiobooks have changed the direction of my life when I suffered that setback. Listening to people, and this is the funny thing, when you listen to really famous people and their autobiographies, and you listen to them, you realize, oh my God, I didn't realize he came from this, and this, and had this setback and this setback. These are normal people. But one thing people like, you know, Phil Knight, who created Nike, Arnold Schwarzenegger, James Dyson, all these like multi-millionaires, billionaires, successful. Bruce Springsteen, finished his book. I'm not a big fan of his music, but I just know he was such an inspirational person with regards to commitment and having a vision of where he wanted to go. And I read loads and loads of biographies, and the thing that makes them different is their belief that it's actually going to come true,
Hmm.
their unwavering belief. And these people are all over the world, from all different backgrounds, all different classes, all different races. They might not come from London, New York, Paris, where it's an affluent area. They might come from an area where there's no money. But it's that belief that got Arnold Schwarzenegger from Austria across into the United States, and and followed his direction for this successful career. So I think, if you can think, right, remember that you're not posting this to social media.
You're not
You're not
what?
going to stand up in a posting your vision statement to
Got
social
it.
media. You're not going to stand up in a room. You could share it with your partner if your partner's very supportive, but this is for you. So don't be embarrassed. Really write it down there. I wrote down that I wanted to have 6 best-selling books. I've now got 4. I've already had 6 in my mind for years. But for me, that was a big jump because I'm dyslexic. But it means, anybody can achieve anything. I just have to work a bit harder at the book side of things than somebody who's got a degree in English.
Okay.
We all have limitations, but we can overcome those
Right.
limitations.
Okay. So what I hear is the first step to overcoming the mindset that um, is holding us back is the visualization, writing it down, repeating it,
Yeah.
uh, listening to other people's success and sort of borrowing
Mhm.
their mindset in a way by imagining, like, let's say there's a photographer that we think is doing great, learning what they're doing and kind of borrowing that vision rather than relying on our own.
Mhm.
So, what would be a second step to overcoming the mindset that holds us back from success?
One of the things, another thing that I is that you probably heard about gratitude. So being
Yes.
grateful for something. So I do this, but I do it in a certain way. And in my journal, I encourage people every single day, and it's only 5 or 10 minutes, is to write down 3 things that you're grateful for, but in the direction of a person that you're grateful for, a possession that you're grateful for, and an experience that you're grateful for.
A
Now, what
person.
that
Okay,
does,
I'm going to
a
repeat that.
person,
A person,
yep,
a what was
possession, a
possession,
possession, yep, and an
and
experience. An
okay.
experience. So what that does is you can say something like, I'm truly grateful for my best friend, and name that person, and then why you're truly grateful. We had a brilliant holiday last year to such and such, or I could say I'm truly grateful for my mother. She's such an inspirational woman. At 83 years old, she's still a Samaritan, and she does 25 hours a week on the phones in the Samaritans. She's always supported me, even when I was a bit of a rebel and I got kicked out of school. So
Mhm.
that would be me genuine and writing that down. I then move on to a possession. So I could say, yeah, I'm very grateful for my Triumph 1200 Scrambler motorcycle, which is my dream motorcycle. I bought it last year. I've just been away on a Triumph experience day riding
But
the bike through the Brecon Beacon. So that could be an experience. That could be my possession. And then an experience, I could say, yeah, I'm truly grateful for my holiday last year to Jamaica with my daughter. We went to do, it was all about her. She rode a horse through the through the sea and across on the beaches. We
mm,
went to Bob Marley's home, that sort of stuff. So you relive it now. By doing that, what you're realizing is, first of all, you've already got a lot to be grateful for in your life. And the older you are, the more experiences you've had, the more people you've known, and the more possessions you've had. So you're never going to run out of stuff to be grateful for. But what it does is it puts you in a very positive start to the day. Now, remember that, 10 years ago, I was, it was hard to be grateful for anything because I was really at a low point. So I had to drum this into myself. But what that's done, doing this for about, 8 or 9 years, what that's done for me now is it's not often I get a setback. And if I do, if I get knocked by a setback, if I get a setback, I just go, oh, well, maybe it's opening the door for something different to happen. I look at setbacks in a different way, and I don't let anything affect my negativity. Um, so having that self-belief, having a direction for where I'm going with my visualization, and also being in a very positive mindset from the minute you get up
I love it.
really helps us. Now, if you'd asked me to do all this 11 years ago or 12 years ago, right, I would have told you it was a load of rubbish, right? You know, I'm ex-military, typical guy, typical bloke. You know, don't go to the doctors if there's anything the matter with me. I'm like, oh, I'll sort it out myself.
Uh-huh.
But I was at a position where I had nowhere else to turn,
Right.
and I started listening to audio books to try and lift. And these people who were famous, these people who were successful, were talking about gratitude and about visualization and about goal setting and direction. I thought, right, well, it's worked for
Right.
them. What have I got to lose? I've got nothing left. I've got to
Right.
move forward. Yeah.
Yes. So I have so my turning point for just time to reinvent myself. Let's think about what my next chapter might be. I had a growth in my sinus, and uh, we found it in 2010. The big brain surgery to get all of it finally gone was 10 years ago, almost today. And one thing my sister noticed, because it was terrifying.
Mhm.
It was benign, but if we hadn't removed it, I would not be alive. It wasn't going to stop growing, and it was, right there next to the
Yeah.
brain, not in not in the brain per se, but it was trying to get there. So,
Yeah.
and um, it was one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had, because what I did um, intuitively, because I've spent a lifetime working on these things that you're talking about and being positive and pulling myself into the moment and trying to quiet the chatter of fear and regret. My sister noticed that whenever I was in pain or scared or, um, facing the unknown, I started listing what I was grateful for. And I didn't even
Mhm.
know I was doing that. But when I was um, like I can just remember in the when you're getting prepped before surgery, and I was feeling scared. I was like, but I've got the best, honestly, the best uh, surgeons possible for this situation. I can afford excellent medical care. I've got my sweet sister helping me. The rest of my body is great, and all of that relaxes that fear, which
Mhm.
makes everything else easier. My first reaction when I found out this wasn't just a little, like there's polyps that people get in their nose that can be problematic, that it was something much, much more intense than that, was I just don't want to live. Let me just check out now. I don't want to go through this. But what I love about what you're sharing is we don't know when there's going to be a time that having cultivated gratitude is going to be the best thing we've created. And that
Yeah.
was, after decades of personal growth, spiritual growth. And I also, people said they were inspired by me, and I was just doing, you know, my thing. And um, the habits I had created from all of the work, and I know all the work you're doing, you've created such good habits of thinking and living and talking, that when the trials come, because they will, we've got we've got this solid foundation. So I love what you're sharing, that
Yeah.
especially about gratitude. And I I another something that I don't know when, but I was at a workshop where we kind of played this game of, and then what? So, like, if you think of your worst fear, that this might happen. Then you ask, okay, well, and then what are you afraid of? And then you list that. And so if that happens, what are you afraid of? And you keep going till you reach that point where you realize, oh, well, and I can handle that. If all of that happens, I'll handle it. And I've shared this before on my show, but um, my biggest fear used to be, and I'll end up a bag lady. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
politically correct now, but that was my big fear, that this client won't call back, I won't book this, and then I won't book anything, and then blah, 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 and I'll be broken, and I'll end up a bag lady. And then at this workshop where we were challenging all that, I realized, oh, and if that would happen, I'll handle that. I would
Mhm.
find a shopping cart and a community and a bridge to sleep. I would,
Yeah.
not that
Yeah.
I'm visualizing that for my future, but that the challenging those fears is and having that habit of the gratitude and the positivity in the midst of whatever. I really am so not, well, I guess impressed, but I'm so happy to hear that through what was the worst time in your life, you found resources inside of yourself and probably outside of yourself to turn, turn that frown upside down. Have you heard that term?
Yeah.
To
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Totally.
to use it to not only make your life more meaningful and powerful, but to be able to then be a resource, not of a
Yeah.
resource to the world to share that. And, that's something always dear to my heart is to be of service. Is
Mhm.
that, what are your thoughts about that, Jeff?
Totally. Because even if you just look at my social media, whether it's my LinkedIn or my Facebook, I spend a lot of time giving stuff. Not because I want to help, because I want to help people, because I believe the more I put out there, the more you give, the more you're trying to help people, the more good stuff just comes back to you anyway.
Right,
So, if you scroll through my LinkedIn, it's very, very seldom you'll see a sales post from me. The only sales posts I do really is talking about my books. I don't try and sell my program. However, lots of people will message me, say, Jeff, I've been following you for a while. I love what you do. I not only do great, put out some great top tips and advice, but I enjoy following your posts and reading what you've been up to and sharing your images. Um, People know what I do because they only have to look at my profile on my website to know what I do. So I don't have to try and sell that to people. And then they'll say, look, I'm interested in joining your program. I'd love to work with you. But I haven't had to do any selling. I've socially sold, so to speak, by giving advice. And, because people are like, well, if this is what he gives out for free, what would it be like if I worked with him or paid him? So I think when you don't try to sell, you give, it makes a big difference.
right.
And you get seen by the wider community. I got approached by the BIPP to be their president because of what I do for the community. The same with Olympus Cameras came to me because they've seen stuff go out in magazines come, so that the opportunity comes when you give. Um and
Hey,
another thing
Jeff.
that I do,
Hey, Jeff,
what
every now and then your sound gets muffled, and I don't know if you put your
right,
hand on something. I'm
I'll
not
just
sure.
so it might be because I'm a little bit I'll bring the
So it's
yeah
good, and then it gets a little muffly, and
right,
then it stops. So anyway, it's been on and off.
right.
So just wanted to alert you. So what I hear in that, because I think there are people who give to get.
Mhm.
And what I hear is you give out of your own generosity. And what's natural is you receive
Yeah,
when you give.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I know I think we are of a similar heart that the act of giving and supporting other people is a reward in itself. And
Mhm.
the fact that good things come back to us is a bonus. We're not doing it like, okay, after all I've done for you, you better give back to me.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not, it's not that kind of thing. Now, how do you think being generous impacts your mindset? in your own fears of imposter or, just this whole topic that we're on.
I think when you're generous and you give, and then it can be anything, it doesn't have to be like, you do a photography shoot for somebody, for a charity, or I'm talking about just giving generally in life,
Right.
so you could give something to a friend, you can give somebody a hand, you can give a really nice compliment, or so
Yeah.
you could be, somebody could help you out in a store, and you could go over to the manager of that store and say, just let make you aware that sales assistant there has not just, provided this, they've gone out their way, they've been absolutely fantastic, and I'd just like to commend them. It's like, and how good does that person feel? And you feel great because you've done it. I quite often I'll go to a cash point machine if I see somebody on the street, and I'll say, right, if that person's there when I come out and get a coffee, I'm going to go to the cash point machine, get them some money, and give them some money. And it's that small act that, I won't give like £1. I might give £10, £20, something, but it's not something I do on a regular basis, because then I'd have no money left if I give it to everybody I see. But I thought, yeah, if as opposed to putting £1 in somebody's cup, if I can put a £10 note or a £20 note, that person will remember that day because, oh wow, that man was very generous, but I feel good about it. I feel great about it.
So how
Um,
so how does this help our own insecurities and mindset and this overall intention to
well, I think when you do stuff like that, you realize how special you can be to other people.
Mhm.
That's in lots of ways, whether it's like I say, whether it's just a compliment or an act of actually giving something physical to somebody, you realize you can actually make an impact on somebody else with
Right.
your generosity and with your positivity. Even taking time to, a friend struggling with something, say, right, come on, we'll go out for cake and coffee and we'll talk, and I'll listen. It's that sort of stuff. And um it's having that one thing I won't do with, after going through the visualization, because I go through visualization, I set all my goals, and I've done that for years. I've got another book that's all about goal setting, the Ambitious Photographer's Journal, and it breaks that down into like your business, your lifestyle, your rewards, your brand, your social media reach, all that sort of stuff. So it gives you clear direction and the steps you should be taking. But one thing I do is I have my gratitude, I have my visualization, I have my goals, and then I give generously to people every now and then, or do stuff that gives me a good feedback. But one thing I do, and I've in 8 years, 7 or 8 years, apart from a period of probably about 3 weeks, I've never watched the news and I've never bought a newspaper
Wow.
because I limit my exposure to negativity. So I started this about 7 years ago, and then obviously COVID hit. I hadn't got a clue what was going on. And my girlfriend was saying, "Have you not been watching the news? Have you not? We're going to get locked down, blah blah blah." So I went on and I watched the news for about 3 weeks, and I think I could only stand it for about 3 weeks, and then I had to stop watching it because I was just, in fact, I had lost all respect for the newsreaders because I felt like they were talking down to me. I felt they were dramatizing. It's just their voice. It was very dramatic. It was fear and scaremongering because that I hadn't had news within my life for about 5 or 6 years. Obviously, it was a terrible time, but it just added to more anxiety. And so after
Yes.
that 3 weeks, I shut it off and I never went back to it. I also went into Facebook at that time and I left a load of groups because people say, social media is negative. I, I, I disagree. I think social media can be very uplifting. It depends who's in your social media.
Mhm.
I'm in lots of, fitness groups and lots of mindset inspirational groups, lots of landscape and nature photography groups. I follow people who are very positive, and I never defriend anybody. I just unfollow them. If somebody looks like they're ranting all the time and being negative, I'll just unfollow because I
Mhm.
think the act of unfriending is a negative thing anyway. I just choose not to see their stuff.
Right.
Um, so and then people say, "Well, how do you manage not knowing what's going on in the world?" I manage fantastic, actually. This is because think about it, most of the stuff that's going on in the world, like, the wars, disasters, there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
It's not in your geographical area. If you can sit and consume and have that, it builds up fear, it builds up negativity. There's nothing you can physically do about it. But what you can focus on, what you can do is, make those dreams a reality that you've set out to do. You
Right.
can positively impact people around you and within your local area. And that's something you giving something back and you doing something good. So you can control all the stuff that's happening in the world, which is shocking and horrible. There's nothing I can physically do about it.
Well,
So I choose time to, really great relationships with my friends, my family, great experiences with my daughter, the people I work with my business, and within my local area. So I'm doing the best I can with what I physically can do. There's no point in me trying to worry about other stuff because it's a waste of energy, isn't it?
right, absolutely. So what I'm hearing that I've added to my list is limiting our exposure to negativity. Um, in many ways, I imagine it's not just don't listen, like don't watch the news all day, every
Yeah.
day, or the what's considered news, but it's really a form of entertainment, negative entertainment. Hang around with positivity. Think
Mhm.
what one of the so my dad was a pastor, and uh I guess vicar is what it would be
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
England, right? And so I've got thousands of Bible verses in my head. And one of my favorites that I think is what you're saying right here. So this is a 2,000-year-old plus concept is whatever is pure, whatever is honorable, whatever is beautiful, on and on. Think on those things. And so
Mhm.
that's what I'm hearing you say is one of the ways to help our mindset. These are really practical tips you're giving.
Mhm.
Um, is to guard your world, guard what comes in,
Mhm.
and stick with the positives.
Yeah.
I've even friends. There's like on Saturday Night Live, there was Debbie Downer, that whatever was positive, she had a way of spinning it the other
Mhm.
way. And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
I used to hang out with Debbie Downers because it was kind of, there was something appealing. I think
Mhm.
go in with gossip as well, but there's a point where I had to eliminate that. Um, so yeah, so what I'm hearing is having a vision and 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 living that vision,
Yeah.
uh, reading books, listening to um, like famous people and what it took for them to, I'm sure, get over the imposter syndrome and their
Mhm.
mindsets, uh, experience and marinate yourself in what you're grateful for, generosity, staying away from negativity as much as you can. We're almost out of time. Is there one more? Um, you
I
know,
think one big thing is, like people talk about fear, and fear can manifest itself in lots of different ways. Fear can be a long way off, people worrying about something in the future. And I have this mindset now, which I've had since I lost everything and then started back, is that I didn't care anymore. It was like,
ah,
I did go through a point of where it doesn't matter. So I came, because there's that old acronym that fear stands for, false expectations appearing real. So it's the false negative expectations appearing real. So you worry about something, but how many times have you worried about something and it's never happened? So a
most of
lot of
the
our
time.
negative thoughts go through our mind, never actually happen. Now, that self-belief aspect, and you believing, oh, that'll never happen, this will never, that I'll never achieve that success, or I can't achieve that success because of this and this. These limiting self-beliefs can come from external influences. Oh yes, there's a cost of living crisis. Yes, people haven't got any money, but so when you start believing that, you can't see yourself having success.
Mm,
But if you removed all that and you say, you know what, I'll deal with the crap when it actually comes to my front door,
right,
as
right,
opposed to worrying about it. I'm not saying like being like irresponsible and saying, "Oh, don't care," but don't worry about something until it has actually happened.
right.
You
Well,
know?
there's a
Yeah,
scripture in
yeah,
that too that comes to mind. You're
yeah,
bringing out the
yeah,
preacher's kid in me, which
yeah.
is what is it? Don't trouble, something about trouble. Oh gosh. Um, today's troubles is sufficient unto itself, something like that.
Yeah.
It's basically saying deal with what's here now. Don't don't worry about the potential future. Deal with what's here, and when the future comes, you'll deal with what it comes. And of course, that Bible verse is going to pop up in my head more clearly after
Yeah.
we part. But it's very um, that's a huge way to live a healthier life and not cluttering our minds up and our spirit and our
Mm.
soul and our particles and our
Yeah.
vibration with
A typical
the
one, and
negativity.
I must have had this, oh, God knows how many times, hundreds of times from photographers, um, especially ones who I work with on board my program, and I'll get a message of a voice clippers. They'll say, Jeff, I put in that quote to that woman the other day. I haven't heard back from her now. It's been 5 days. I think she's gone with somebody else. I was too expensive. I've completely fluffed it. So I'll get on and I'll drop my message and say, has she messaged you? Has she emailed you? Has she said that? No. Well, what makes you think that? Well, I know it. No, you don't know it. So,
Right.
well, follow them up. Just follow them up and say, hi. I've had a few bookings come in this week for shoots. I'm just trying to put my diary together for the next couple of weeks. Wondering if that quote was okay. If there was any other stuff you needed adding to it. I says, never question the price. Never say, oh, I hope it wasn't too expensive.
Hmm.
And then the amount of people who've come back and go, oh my God, she apologized and said, I'm so sorry. It's been really busy this week. I've just had a chance to look over it. Yeah, it's fantastic. Can we book in and get that done next week? You know,
Yeah.
but in the mind, this person has been trying to manifest the positive outcome in their head by thinking all the negatives. When you
Right.
send something, think positive.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't come through, think, well, it hasn't come through because something better is going to happen.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
One of my favorite books is The Four Agreements, Neil Donald, no, Don Miguel Ruiz. Do you know that book?
No, no.
Okay. Another book
Second book.
for you. And the Four Agreements are don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, always do your best. And then there's your best is going to change from time to time. And I always forget, it's like the seven dwarfs. I always forget one when I'm not looking at it.
Yeah,
But what I hear you say here that fits right in that is not making assumptions. That
yeah,
that assuming, and especially when we've got some challenges or we've got some negative messages that came to us that kind of implanted themselves in our spirit, it's easy to make negative assumptions.
mm,
So what I'm hearing you say is go check it out. Um,
yeah,
and I hear people being like, I'm so defeated. I've heard that word so much in social media over
yeah,
over things that are just a part of doing business
mm,
and understanding that we're not for everybody. But yeah, to assume I'm too expensive rather than I don't know, there's 100 other reasons somebody might not have booked me
yeah.
or didn't book me right away. And um, I love that you said the part about something better's on its way. Uh,
And I think, what you got to remember is quite often, you could be dealing with somebody who's CEO of a big company. I've spoken to, loads and loads of big companies. I've got ambassadorships, sponsorships. But when I've dealt with bigger companies, when I've worked in the professional capacity, now you're doing Zooms with people. You jump on a Zoom with somebody like it could be the head of marketing for a particular company. He could be in his office working from home, and he's like, "How are you doing, Jeff? How's things? What's the weather like?" People buy from people they like, and we're all human beings. We're all people. So if you're genuine, you're authentic, you give in, you're putting stuff out there, you're going to connect with somebody at the other end of that email, the other end of that conversation who goes, yeah, I like that person. I like that person. So it doesn't really matter. They're not looking at your job title and your status. Now, one of my clients, she's producing a journal. It's going to go out live next week on Amazon. I says, what you need to be doing is you need to be trying to get on podcasts and get on radio stations and stuff like that. So I sent her a pre-scripted, which I use for when I do a book launch and stuff. And I said, just alter this and change this, So she's very, very new to the industry. She's wrote a book on body confidence for women, and she's a boudoir photographer. Book's really, really good. So she sent it out, and she sent it out to two magazines and 3 radio stations. I spoke to her this afternoon. She's got 3 of those radio stations have already got back to her and said, "This sounds absolutely fantastic. We'd love to have you on." And one of those is a BBC radio station.
Wow.
And she was beaming. She was like, "I can't believe it," Um, and the BBC one says that's perfect timing because we've got a woman who's coming on next week. It's next Friday. It's going to be recorded, who is a body confidence expert and guru. And this is a subject that we've been discussing. We'd love to have you on and have your input. It's because she came from a place of giving. She'd worded it saying, I've got some great content, some stuff that will really help you listeners. It wasn't about her, it was about what she could give. And they didn't look at her and go, "Oh, she's only got 200 followers or two," they thought, "Oh, right, this
Right.
woman has some high value." Yeah.
Right. So what I hear out of that, as a little extra, I think I'm on 9 points here, is taking action. That even if we're not feeling like we're great or people want us
Yeah.
or all of those things,
Yeah.
just take some steps, get some
You
movement.
don't presume that the other person is going to judge you the way you're judging yourself.
Right.
If you put the right message out there, I'm like, "Oh, wow, this person's great," connect with them, great. Just because somebody has a fancy job title or last year I did a talk with Amazon, and I was invited to go down and host this this like big event, and there was people like Amazon, Philips, Bowden's. They were all big companies with all big fancy job titles. Now I normally speak at photography events, some
Mhm.
amongst photographers, my own kind, and that doesn't bother me. But going to this, I found it quite intimidating because it was all CEOs and people with fancy job titles and people in suits, and I don't normally wear a suit. I don't even have a tie. But to go down there was quite intimidating. But when I got there and I started speaking to them people, there was this one woman who was um, from Philips, and she was chatting to me, and she went, "Oh, I'm a little bit nervous." And she had the fancy job title,
Uh-huh.
and she went, "Have you ever done anything like this?" I says, "Oh yeah, I've spoken at lots of photography events." She says, "Oh, I've never done a public speaking."
Ah,
So so just because somebody's got a job title, don't assume that they don't have the same sort of worries. And we're all human. That's what I'm saying is, don't let that put you off and think you're not worthy of speaking to that person or you're not worthy of that opportunity, because you
right.
are.
Right. I love it. Well, we are almost out of time. I had a question for you. Um, First of all, question 1 is if people want to know more, get into your world,
Yep.
where do we send them to?
So my website is thephotographersmentor.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at Jeff Brown, the Photographer's Mentor. On Facebook, I tend to use my own personal Facebook page more now, so you can friend request me on Jeff Brown, the Photographer's Mentor. And you can also find me on Amazon. Just look for any of my books on Amazon. And I've actually got my 2 goals. So that's my goal setting book, The Ambitious Photographer's Journal, which is on Amazon. And this is that works alongside it. This is the new mindset book, which is the Photographer's Gratitude and Mindset Journal. And when you buy Jeff Brown, and if you put those into Amazon, you'll see my other books as well in there.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so my last question, I'm going to alter it a little bit
Yeah.
from what I usually ask. So, because you have so many things that you excel in and support people in and know how to share, if there was one thing that 30 years from now, if you're not, or 50, I don't know how far out we
Yeah.
want to go, because I have mentors that are no longer with us, but the ones that kind of live in my mind clearly are the ones where there's, okay, why am I having trouble saying this? Like they have shared something with the world specifically that I identify as like their gift or their
Mhm.
like Charles Lewis, he's still around. But
Oh yeah,
he,
yeah. I did his course when I left the Navy in 2004. Yeah,
yeah, he's
yeah,
been on my
yeah.
show.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, is about selling wall portraits. So
Yeah.
that and anyway, so what would be of all the things that you love, what would you like to have impacted the world, or what can you help me with my question?
But I think one of the big things that
What's your legacy?
is a big sort of eye opener for photographers is stop worrying too much about your photography because I remember one person saying to me, Jeff, can you tell me, is my photography crap? And I went, because I'm not managing to sell anything. And I said, no, your photography isn't crap, but your brand is. And remember that our clients aren't photographers unless you sell in photography courses. Our clients are consumers, and consumers look at branding first. We've been branded and marketed to for what, the past 100 years, or more. Um, and people don't buy on price, people buy on perceived value. And a lot of the perceived value comes from the brand itself, the colors, the fonts, the feel, the message, the look. If everybody in the world bought on price alone, Jaguar, Mercedes, BMW, Tiffany's, Marriott, all of them, all the brands would disappear, would all go to the cheapest store, would all stay in the cheapest hotel, and would all buy a bog standard car because we were buying on price. But all of those high-end brands sell on perceived value, and a lot of their value comes from their brand and the brand message. So as a photographer, you need to think like business, not like a photographer. Get your brand right and get your message right. Connect with the people, and they will buy on perceived value. Some people won't because photography isn't something they value,
Mhm.
right? So, but don't worry about that. They're just not your customers, you know?
Got it.
But
So,
there's other people who have high perceived value in, so think about your brand. That's the biggest thing I would say. Think about your brand and have a brand that gives high perceived value, looks high end, feels high end. If you look and feel high end, you can charge a high end price. You can have the best photos in the world, but if your brand looks cheap, your message is wrong, they'll just not sell.
yeah, I totally agree with that. Well, thank you, Jeff, so much for saying yes to being on the show again. And I almost didn't want to ask you questions because what's coming out of you just naturally is so inspiring and
Thank you.
pleasurable and rich that I'm like, I could have done one of those kind of interviews where I ask you one question. Also, you know, you don't like you can keep talking like me without anybody
Yeah.
having to prompt you. Um, I could have done one of those. Yeah, I'll just sit back and let you share because, it, like I want to listen and listen and listen to what you share. So I know that you are having a huge impact in the world, and I'm honored to have you on my show again. And we will do this again and again and again. So
Definitely. It's been an
thank you
absolute pleasure.
so, so much.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Lucy. And I hope everybody's got something great from it.
I'm sure they have. So I just said goodbye to my wonderful guest, Jeff Brown. And, there's some people where I could just listen to them talk and not even need to ask questions and then share it with you. And we'd all get so much inspiration. And that is what I feel with Jeff. He's just got such clarity and such a great way of communicating his thoughts and his heart. So I'm just give you a couple little points about what we talked about. And it's about up leveling our mindset. First of all, he said we want to have a vision and type it up and record it and listen to it and kind of marinate yourself in a vision. And he said the next point, if you don't have one, or even if you do, read books and listen to recordings and talks from people who are successful. And some of them, you know, in our industry, you might get a bigger vision by studying other people and what they've accomplished. Then the next thing is gratitude. Every day, write 3 things you're grateful for. Things about a person, possession, and an experience. The next one is to be generous, and that raises your magnetism, your positivity. So yeah, generosity is a wonderful way to shift your focus from yourself. And the other one is to limit your exposure to negativity. And then the other is to challenge your fears. And the last one is don't make assumptions about things. Take action, move forward. So that's it for now. And thank you for listening, everyone. It really means a lot. Again, you can go to lucydumascoaching.com and connect with me there. And please share this with your friends. Go to YouTube, watch it if you're not watching it there. Subscribe all around. You know, this is mostly a labor of love. And so the way you can give love back is those kinds of things. So thank you and bye for now.